I never imagined that a casual Sunday dinner would be the night my entire life cracked open, and the truth I had been avoiding for years would finally slam into me like a tidal wave. My name is Louise Walsh. I'm 33 years old, and for most of my adult life I've carried a silent weight, a role I never asked for but somehow fell into the family provider. While my parents painted me as the independent one, the capable one, the daughter who never needed help, they quietly drained me dry, all while nurturing my sister Megan like some fragile jewel. I didn't mind, at least not at first. I told myself it was love duty, gratitude for the family that raised me. But that night, when the truth surfaced in a single envelope left carelessly on the coffee table, everything I thought I knew about love and family shattered into dust. It started with my father's voice, sharp, biting, echoing through the vacation home at Bear Lake. "How could you be so selfish?" he snapped, pacing the room with his face red and his fists clenched. He waved the property tax bill at me as if it were a verdict. "Your sister needs that money for her business. You have more than enough." I froze, my hand still gripping the very bill he had shoved at me, as if daring me to deny him. My mother sat quietly on the couch, her eyes fixed on her lap, avoiding me entirely. That silence hurt more than his shouting. I swallowed hard and finally managed to steady my voice. "Dad, I've been paying for everything for years. The property taxes, Megan's business trips, your medical bills when insurance didn't cover even family vacations. I've never asked for anything in return. But I can't keep doing this forever." He didn't even flinch. "We gave you everything growing up, and now that we need you, you're abandoning us while your sister is trying to make something of herself." It was then that I saw it, the corner of a document peeking out from beneath a magazine on the coffee table. I pulled it free before my father could stop me. Bold letters at the top seared themselves into my memory: trust fund. Beneficiary, Megan Walsh. My stomach turned to ice as I flipped through the pages, my hands trembling. The numbers screamed at me. $350,000, set aside for my sister, with plans for future contributions. All while I was told year after year that there wasn't enough money to help me with my tuition, that I had to work 2 jobs through college, that my struggles were just part of building character. "When were you going to tell me about this?" I whispered. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. My father's jaw tightened as he yanked the papers back. "You weren't supposed to see that." And in that moment, it all made sense. Megan's dance lessons when I was told to focus on academics. Her shiny new car at 16 while I took the bus. Her private university education funded by family money while I worked endless shifts at a coffee shop just to pay rent. It wasn't circumstance. It wasn't bad timing. It was favoritism. It was betrayal dressed up as parenting. "Sweetheart." My mother finally spoke, her tone so soft it almost sounded loving. "Your sister just needs more help than you. You've always been so independent, so capable. We're proud of you." Pride. That word sliced me open. Their twisted logic meant I was punished for surviving while my sister was rewarded for her dependency. I thought back to all those times I begged for help, the nights I went without sleep, juggling jobs, the months I couldn't afford car repairs, the days I barely scraped together deposits for rent. Every single time they had told me, "We just don't have the money." But the money was there, just not for me. I wanted to scream, to hurl accusations until the walls shook. Instead, a strange calmness settled over me. My father slid the tax bill toward me again, his tone almost dismissive. "The taxes are due next month. You'll take care of it." That was when something inside me cracked. Not the way a glass shatters suddenly, but the way a dam begins to leak, then bursts. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized he wasn't asking. He was commanding. He believed he owned me. I smiled faintly, picked up the bill and whispered, "I'll take care of it." He relaxed instantly, mistaking my quiet for compliance. But he didn't see what was in my eyes. For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in guilt or obligation. I was rising with clarity. He thought he still had me under his thumb, but I knew better. That night, as I drove home past the mountains, I usually loved their snow-capped peaks, seemed to glare down at me, accusing me of my own blindness. By the time I got to my apartment, I already had my laptop open. For years, I'd kept a meticulous folder labeled family contributions. Every payment, every receipt, every transfer I had made for them. Line after line filled the spreadsheet. Property taxes, Megan's car, my mother's surgery, family trips. 5 years, over $100,000. Money I could have invested in my future poured instead into theirs. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. Dad says you're being difficult about the taxes. Don't be selfish, Louise. I laughed bitterly. Of course. To them, my silence, my sacrifice had never been generosity. It was obligation. But they were about to learn that the independent one they had taken for granted had finally reached her breaking point. I didn't sleep that night. I sat hunched over my desk until dawn, the glow of the laptop casting long shadows across my apartment walls. Line after line of my spreadsheet replayed my life in numbers the year Megan wanted to launch her boutique, and I fronted her startup costs, the medical emergency when Dad called crying on the phone, and I wired thousands before I even paid my own rent, the summer vacations at the lake house, where everyone smiled for pictures, while my credit card bled silently in my purse. The total in the corner of the document glared at me like a verdict: $118,512. Money I would never get back. Money they never thanked me for. When the sun finally broke through the blinds, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to fight them for fairness. I wasn't going to beg for scraps of affection or recognition. I was going to take back control in the quietest, sharpest way possible. The first step was simple: stop paying. No more property taxes, no more surprise emergencies, no more checks disguised as family help. I emailed the county assessor's office to reroute future notices to my parents' address. The next bill would land in their mailbox, not mine. Then I drafted a letter to my father. My hands shook as I typed, but my words were steady. I will no longer be responsible for the vacation home or any financial obligations tied to it. Please do not contact me for money again. This is final. I didn't send it yet. I wanted to wait, to watch, to let them feel the silence of my absence. 2 weeks later, the storm arrived. It started with a voicemail from my mother, her voice high and trembling. Louise, the tax bill came. Your father is furious. Please just call me back. We can work this out. I didn't call. Then Megan's text lit up my phone. Seriously, you're just going to leave us hanging. The house is for all of us, not just you. You can't abandon family. I stared at her words, my lips curling into a bitter smile. Abandon family. As if they hadn't abandoned me 1,000 times already. The silence stretched into days, and then my father finally broke it with an email short, sharp, and dripping with entitlement. Louise, the taxes are due. You know what needs to be done. Stop being dramatic and pay it. You're better than this. Better than this. My whole life he had used those words like shackles. Be better than Megan. Better than the neighbors. Better than myself. Work harder. Give more. Expect less. And now he was trying to use them again, as if they still carried the same weight. I deleted the email. Instead, I called my Uncle Alan, the only relative who had ever seen through the cracks of our family facade. I told him everything: the trust fund, the years of payments, the bills sitting unpaid on their table. He listened quietly, then said, Louise, they've built a cage out of your guilt. And the cruelest part is they convinced you to lock the door yourself. But you're the only one who can open it again. His words clung to me in the days that followed, especially when the next call came. This time, it was my father. His voice wasn't angry. It was cold. You're making a mistake, Louise. If the county seizes that house, don't think you'll be welcome under this roof again. You'll regret this. And in that moment, I realized something that nearly brought me to my knees. I didn't regret it. Not one bit. I looked out my window at the quiet street below, the ordinary world still spinning, and whispered into the silence, I'm not your safety net anymore. The dam had broken, and there was no going back. The tax bill became a clock on the wall I couldn't stop hearing. Days clicked forward, and in the quiet between midnight and morning, I'd imagine the lake house as it always had been, when we were little pine light on the floorboards, the sting of cold air on bare feet, my mother humming while Megan spun, always in the center of the room, always clapping for herself. I wanted to miss it. I wanted nostalgia to pull me back. but the memories felt like glass I kept cutting my hands on. On day 19, a certified letter arrived at my place by mistake. The county's delinquency notice had been sent to an old mailing address, still linked to my name from years ago when I filed repairs for them. I stared at the black letters like they might blink. Delinquent. Intent to lien. It wasn't fear that washed over me. It was a strange, clean quiet. Consequence, finally stepping out of the shadows. That night, Megan called from an unknown number. When I picked up, the first thing out of her mouth was a scoff. "You're really going to let a lien happen over what Louise pried?" "Over truth," I said. "Over a lifetime of being told there wasn't enough for me while you were handed everything." "Dad created the trust because I needed it," she shot back. "Because I'm starting a business." "You started 3, I said softly. "You walked away from all of them when they got hard." I could hear her breathing the frustrated little huffs she used to do when she was 12 and Mom would fix her ponytail. Her voice went cold. "He says if the house goes, you're out of the family." I almost laughed. "Out of what exactly?" "The Favor Factory. The club where love has a price list." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen listening to the dull hum of the refrigerator and the faraway siren of a city I'd chosen for myself, and I thought, I do not need their roof. I have my own. 2 mornings later, I scheduled a meeting with the family's estate attorney. I half expected him to refuse me to guard the gates the way my father always had. But Mr. Klein, 80 if he was a day, with eyes like tired marbles, agreed to see me as a courtesy. His office smelled like paper and lemon oil. Photos of other people's families lined the walls. Birthdays, weddings, babies, not a single picture of mine. He poured coffee I didn't drink and said, "Your father would disapprove of this conversation." "My father disapproved of me before he learned my first word," I replied. "I want to know how the trust was funded." Mr. Klein hesitated, then shuffled a stack of files with hands that shook just enough to be human. "There was a UTMA," he said, finally not meeting my eyes. "A custodial account your grandfather started for both of you. Small at first. Significant by the time he passed. Your father petitioned the court to consolidate those assets into a single trust for your sister, on the assertion that you were self-sustaining. The judge allowed it." I felt my throat close. He took what was meant for both of us. He cleared his throat. He reallocated it. He slid a document across the desk. "There's a clause in here that may interest you. Distributions are contingent on the beneficiary maintaining family harmony." A dry smile ghosted across his mouth. "Your father insisted on that phrase. Family harmony." My father weaponized silence and called it harmony. He'd taught us to swallow our hurt and call it gratitude. I traced the embossed letters with my finger and said, "Does the clause apply to me?" "Not as written." He leaned back, studied me. "You're not here to contest it." "No." Contesting meant begging for a different version of them. I was done begging. He nodded almost with relief. "Then you should know the county will move to tax lien auction next month. Anyone can buy the lien, with penalty interest, of course." "Anyone," I repeated. The word steadied me like a hand on my back. Anyone included me. I stood to leave. "Thank you for the courtesy, Mr. Klein." He looked up then, old face softening. "Miss Walsh, not every wound can be stitched in the place it was made." I carried that sentence like a talisman as the days narrowed toward the auction. My mother's messages became a pendulum: sugar, then venom. "We love you, come over for dinner, let's talk." Followed by, "You're cruel. You're not the daughter we raised." Each time I typed and deleted a dozen replies. In the end, I settled on the only line that felt true. "I won't fund my own erasure anymore." I never pressed send. Some sentences are for you, not for them. The night before the auction, Dad showed up at my building unannounced, as if fatherhood were a key card that still worked. He looked smaller than I remembered, anger pulling his shoulders tight. In the lobby's gray light, he said, "Megan is fragile. She's always been. We did what we had to do." "You did what was easy," I said. "You called my independence pride so you could keep your hands clean while I paid the bill. You created a trust for her and a myth for me." He flinched like I'd struck him. "You're punishing us for loving differently. I'm refusing to starve at a table where only one child is fed." For a heartbeat, something like shame flickered across his face. Then it was gone. "If you buy that lien, you'll break this family." I thought of Megan's car at 16, my bus pass. I thought of tuition bills of nights I poured black coffee into a to-go cup and told myself I didn't need sleep, just grit. I thought of the trust fund paperweight on a coffee table I paid for. It's already broken, I said, and stepped back as the elevator doors opened. He didn't follow me in. I didn't sleep. I laid out my documents like armor cashier's check, bitter registration proof of identity. My hands didn't shake. Dawn pried up the edges of the night, and I drove to the county building with the windows down because I needed to feel the world moving. The room for the auction was smaller than I expected, fluorescent lights humming, a handful of people murmuring about numbers and addresses. I took a seat in the back, palms flat on my knees, and listened as parcel after parcel was called. When the clerk read our lot number, their lake house, the one with my fingerprints in the wood, and my name absent from every deed, I lifted my bidder card. Calm, certain, present for my own life at last. The bidding started lower than I expected. A man in a navy jacket raised his card. First, his voice steady as he said, 10,000. Another bidder jumped in at 15. My heart raced, but not with fear. It was focus, the kind of fire that burns clean. When it reached 25, I raised my hand. The clerk's voice echoed bitter, 72, 25,000. Every head in the room turned, but I didn't flinch. My eyes stayed fixed on the sheet in front of me, the parcel number that represented years of being erased. The man in navy countered, 30. My hand lifted again, 35. Another bidder hesitated, then dropped out. It was just me and him now, trading numbers like blows. 40, 45, 50. At 60, he faltered. I caught the flicker of doubt in his face. I lifted my card once more, my voice clear. 65. Silence. The clerk scanned the room. 65,000 going once, going twice. The gavel cracked. Sold. The sound reverberated through me like thunder. The lien was mine. Their house, the house they flaunted as a symbol of family, the place I had quietly kept alive, was tethered to me now, not through guilt, but through law. I walked out into the sunlight with the cashier's receipt clutched in my hand. For the first time in years, my steps didn't feel heavy. They felt deliberate, free. That evening, I didn't hide the news. I sent a copy of the certificate of purchase to my father's email, then placed a hard copy in their mailbox. No explanations, no apologies, just the truth in black ink. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Megan. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was frantic, laced with disbelief. You can't do this. You've ruined everything. Dad says you'll pay for this. You'll regret it. But I didn't regret it. Not even as the messages poured in. My father thundered about betrayal. My mother pleaded about what people will think. Megan threatened lawsuits she didn't understand. I silenced the phone and sat on my balcony watching the sunset bleed pink into the horizon. For once, the noise didn't reach me. Days turned into weeks. The family's calls shifted from rage to desperation. When the redemption deadline approached, the final chance for them to repay the lien with penalties, my father called me in a voice I barely recognized. Broken. Small. Louise, if you do this, we'll lose the house. Your sister, Dad, I interrupted. You lost me years ago. The house is just the receipt. He didn't reply. The line went dead. When the redemption period passed without payment, the county issued the deed in my name. My name. For the first time, something tangible, undeniable belonged to me. Not Megan, not the family's myth of harmony. Me. I drove to the lake house the following weekend. The air smelled of pine and smoke from distant fireplaces. As I walked through the rooms, each one echoed with ghosts. Megan's birthday parties, my father's lectures, my mother's quiet disapproval. But layered over it all was the sharper memory of every sacrifice I had made, and the realization that I no longer owed this place my tears. I sat on the porch looking out over the water and felt a deep calm settle into me. I had turned their betrayal into my boundary, their favoritism into my freedom. For years, I thought revenge meant fire and fury. But sitting there deed in hand, I realized revenge was quieter than that. Sometimes it looks like peace. The silence that followed was louder than any argument we had ever had. Weeks slipped by without a word from them. No calls, no texts, not even Megan's late-night tirades flooding my phone. It was as though in losing the house, they had also lost their script, the one where I played the dutiful provider, the silent fixer, the invisible backbone they pretended not to see. Then, one afternoon, I received a letter. Handwritten. My mother's looping cursive stretched across the page. Louise, I don't know how we got here. Your father is sick with anger. Megan cries all day. The house meant everything to us. We only did what we thought was right. Please don't shut us out forever. I read it once, twice, 3 times, waiting for the apology that never came. Not once did she acknowledge the years I'd bled myself dry. Not once did she write the words we were wrong. The letter wasn't a confession. It was another manipulation dressed in sorrow. I folded it neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it into a box marked "Keep as evidence," because I wasn't shutting them out. They had shut me out long ago when they decided love could be measured in trust funds and tax bills. Megan finally showed up at my apartment a month later. She stood in the hallway with smeared mascara, fury, and desperation fighting for space on her face. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "Dad only set up the trust because he knew I couldn't handle life the way you can. You're stronger. You don't need help like I do." The words should have cut. Instead, they clarified. That had always been the lie, that my strength excused their neglect, that my resilience justified their favoritism. I looked at her and said softly, "Needing help isn't a sin, Megan, but expecting me to drown so you can float is." Her mouth open-closed, but no words came. She left without another sound. The house remained mine. I didn't sell it. I didn't rent it out. I let it sit empty, its windows reflecting the lake like watchful eyes. People asked me why, and I never gave them a straight answer. But the truth was simple. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming the piece of myself I'd left behind in those walls. And slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt a life without them. I poured my energy into my work, into friendships that didn't come with strings, into quiet mornings where the only voice I heard was my own. For the first time, I allowed myself to dream not of survival, but of joy. Sometimes late at night, I'd walk out onto my balcony and let the cool air wash over me. I'd think of the girl I used to be, hunched over textbooks in a dim dorm room, wondering why her parents never offered to help. I'd think of the young woman counting tips in a coffee-stained apron, ashamed of needing so much when her sister seemed to glide through life. And I'd whisper to her, "It wasn't you. It was never you." Because that was the lesson carved into me through betrayal and silence, through tax bills and trust funds. Love that must be earned isn't love at all. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hear me now. You are not defined by what they withheld. You are not the sum of their favoritism. You are the proof that survival can turn into strength, and strength can turn into freedom. If my story touched you, I hope you'll like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to break free from a family that didn't see your worth? I'd love to hear your story too.